Hello and welcome to Euros All Access with me, Sam Matterface, talkSPORT's chief football correspondent Alex Crook, and talkSPORT's broadcasting legend Jim White joins us as we look back on what's happened so far at Euro 2024 and look forward to what can happen in the last 16. The big stories so far: the favourites falter, own goals and gaffes. The tournament takes off, but the tornadoes have come from the tales of the unexpected. England to play Slovakia in the round of 16, and the route to the final looks very favourable for Gareth Southgate and his team.
I mean, Gareth Southgate must be the luckiest international manager in history. It's the dream draw. There's no two ways about it. England will win. It might not be pretty, but England will win.
And if Slovakia were to find a way of putting England out, is it a bigger shock than when Roy Hodgson's England crashed to Iceland?
When you look at the way the draw has panned out, it's going to be a massive, massive mistake if England do not get at least to a semi-final, and they probably should get to the final.
If they were to lose this game, I mean, that would be an absolute disaster for Southgate to end his tenure.
Who has shone for England so far? Who's shone? Who's the standout? Embrace the tournament with the massive worldwide audience that it gets and say, I'm going to make a statement in this game against Slovakia. I'm going to be man of the match.
The England fans have probably had enough of Southgate, and I think Southgate's had enough of being the England manager.
You'll look back in it thinking, Gareth should have won something.
Yes, in any other circumstances, I think we'd be getting rather excited about that possible route to the final, but things have felt a little bit different. We'll examine that with Jim and with Alex over the next 40 minutes or so. Welcome. We're in Riva Bar, which is just across from our hotel, the beautiful waterside city of Dusseldorf. Have you settled in nicely?
Sam, it's lovely. I have taken Dusseldorf to my heart. I think it's a beautiful city. We've been broadcasting in a couple of locations. The people are great. They've been great to us. They have high hopes for Germany. Let's see what happens. But no, this is a city of style and class, which befits a man like Simon Jordan. And Alex just jetted in on his private jet earlier on this morning. I think you're getting used to it as well, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I spent a bit of time here a week or so ago. Obviously been in Berlin in between, but yeah, I really like it. I think it's got a nice vibe. Lots of different nationalities supporting their country, and that's what's been great about this tournament. I think we're all a little bit concerned that maybe there could be some crowd trouble, but it's been absolutely superb. They've been mingling supporters from all over the world, England and Scotland fans exchanging anthems.
Yeah,
it's been superb.
I like it, Sam, because it's a city that caters for all styles and all budgets. And just yesterday, I was walking past the Primark in the city, and I saw producer Luke, the man who puts our show together on a daily basis, serial award winner back home, buying a substantial amount of clothes in that particular store. So there we are. Everyone's needs.
But did you hear that? As you mentioned that earlier on to me, and you were laughing about it.
Yes.
Alex turned round to him and said, "Where is that Primark?"
I noticed that.
In search of deodorant, may I say?
Wait, you're not going to get that in Primark.
No, but I thought if there's a Primark, there's going to be some kind of shop that sells deodorant and
I can point you in the direction of the German High and Mighty, which caters for very tall and plump men.
I didn't see that coming. I don't think we saw the likes of Georgia coming either. Maybe even Austria's performance has taken a few by surprise. I think we mentioned it on the podcast when we were previewing the tournament. But I think those two teams in particular have captured the imagination of neutrals as well as those people who were expecting them to do well.
Yeah, Jim asked me this morning, what are your standout memories of the tournament? And you alluded to it in the intro. I think so far it has been the tournament of the underdog, the tournament of the minnows. Georgia, obviously the headline act, their first ever international tournament. They beat Portugal, one of the favourites to lift the trophy. They're into the round of 16. Austria, I think under Ralph Rangnick, my mate Wreck-It Ralph, have surprised a few people. Albania even had moments, didn't they? And the players we're talking about are not your Harry Kanes, your Mbappes and your Ronaldos. You're talking about young superstars like Lamine Yamal, who's been absolutely terrific for Spain. And some of the Georgian players as well have really taken the headline. So it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jim, before we get into the round of 16 and start looking at some of the headline acts, when you look at those performances from Georgia, in particular, Romania, the way they've performed and got themselves into the next round, Slovakia, Slovenia, when the dust has settled and you look back at Scotland's campaign, how do you assess it?
No, it's a good question, Sam. Of course it is. It's a mood of huge sadness and huge regret, I'll be honest with you. what an opportunity they had, Sam, to progress from the group stages of a finals anywhere at any time. And it was in their own hands. And I honestly fell into the trap before the game and during the game that this is it, they will do it. They will do it. I don't know if you were the same, Alex. And I thought they will do it. They were denied a penalty. And honestly, back home, I can't stand it when people say it was a stonewall penalty. We were robbed. Well, in actual fact, yeah, they were robbed. And that might have made all the difference. Who knows, Sam? Whoever would have stepped up to take it might have missed it. But the problem was, it's a familiar story. It's the same old story. They could almost lean out and touch it, but they couldn't achieve it.
Is he getting criticism back home for not being braver in that final game?
I think he is. Steve Clarke, of course, we're talking about. And could he have done it differently? Yes, he could. Shea Adams, he stuck with him. Should he have gone Lawrence Shankland? Should he certainly have brought Shankland on earlier than he did? Because Shankland, as you saw later on, Sam, was finding space in areas that were giving the Hungarians problems. So, yeah, I think we look back on it with deep regret. And it would be marvellous sitting here with you and Alex talking about Scotland in the last 16.
Yeah. It'd be great for the tournament as well because they brought a hell of a lot of colour.
They brought colour. Their fans were brilliant everywhere Scotland fans go. And I would say this, of course, but I've seen them in Mexico in 86. I've seen them in France 98. I've seen them all over the world. It's the same old Scotland. The fans are brilliant. The fans win first prize, but Scotland go out early. It's such a shame.
Talking about first prize, who is going to win first prize? Because let's look at the tournament as a whole. Group stage is done and dusted now. Who do we see as the front runner going into the last 16?
I think it's really difficult with the way the draw was panned out. I was keen on Portugal before the tournament. I thought they played well in their first two games. A bit alarming, their performance against Georgia, albeit with a much changed side, but it should still have been strong enough to win that game. I think Spain have been the outstanding team for me in terms of the group they came through. They absolutely demolished Croatia. The 1-0 win against Italy was the most one-sided 1-0 victory you'll ever see. It would have been 5 or 6, but for Donnarumma, so I think they've got a real chance. Germany, I'm not sure we know much about Germany yet because Scotland was so poor in that first game, and that's not a dig at Jim.
Cheers.
But so I think maybe that performance was a bit overhyped based on the opposition.
Yeah.
And then obviously you've got the French who haven't fired yet either. They've not scored a goal from open play. So I've given you 4 answers there. I'm going to say I think Portugal got a good chance still, but based on what I've seen, I'll go Spain.
Okay, I'm going to go for Germany because I'm sticking with the prediction that I made at the beginning of the tournament.
Flip-flop, don't I?
You have to flip-flop, otherwise it wouldn't be you, without you changing your mind after just 3 games. So I'm going to stick with Germany, and I think they have played well, and I think there's a bit more grit and determination about them. They got a really late goal against Greece in the last warm-up game when they were level in that match to win it, to give them the send-off they sort of needed to go into the tournament with a smile on their face. And I think that important late goal from Füllkrug, which saw that they did win the group, I think sort of sets the tone that they're here, they know they've got to compete, they've got to be at the top of their game. Who are you going for?
I like what you said there, Sam. Germany, to me, I think their name could well be on it. I think the entire German population expects it. Their support has been unbelievable. Of course, it would be. But now it's gathering momentum now. You see everywhere we're going. We've been in Munich, and sure, it was evident there. We've been in Frankfurt, it was evident there. Now in Dusseldorf, people are beginning to think Germany. And I do feel that they're strong in so many different departments. Toni Kroos, of course. I love Rudiger. I absolutely love Rudiger at the back. He refuses to lose in any team that he plays for. And I think the Germans, they've got to take care of Denmark. Will they? Yes. I'm pretty sure they will. And from then on in, they'll polarise on that final and win it. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it's certainly the atmosphere around the German team has started to increase in terms of visibility around the cities. I mean, even just coming into this bar now, there are little German flags planted everywhere. I was in the same bar 4 nights ago.
Yes.
That wasn't the case then. Do you know what I mean? It has sort of ramped up. Overall, how have you rated the tournament? The semi-automated offsides have been a success. Refereeing's been a success. The football's been quite good, really, hasn't it? Apart from the few odd games involving some teams.
If you take away the England national team and the Premier League referees, I think the tournament's been superb. You're right.
Yeah.
The automated technologies work really well. I think again we've been given a demonstration to the PGMOL of how VAR should be implemented and how it should work smoothly.
Because even when there has been controversies, things haven't been overturned, it's because things haven't been overturned. So the VAR is not sticking their beak in to a situation. Obviously, the Scotland situation is going to...
What was your take on that, Sam?
Well, it was a penalty.
You commentate on TV, you commentate on talkSPORT. You know the game back to front and inside out. I mean, am I wrong? Stonewall.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that Armstrong does everything right, doesn't he? Gets in front of the final defender, so the defender's got nowhere to go, and he clatters him with his knee into the back of his thigh, which takes him off balance. Now, I know some people are saying, well, he just get in front and get the shot away, but actually that contact on the back of the thigh does make a significant impact on his ability to stay on his feet. So I think there's no doubt that that's a penalty. No doubt. I mean, and when you watch it back, it's obvious, I think.
Yeah. I mean, to not even send the referee to the monitor either.
Yeah, that's a bit of a...
I mean, surely, and if he'd got the monitor and seen what you've just described and accurately described, he would have pointed to the spot.
Absolutely, but I do think that the idea is light touch. Don't get involved unless you really believe that the referee has made a howler. And because we're not privy to the conversations between the VAR and the referee might have said, yeah, I've seen the contact, but I don't think it was significant enough. In which case, the VAR will not then overrule that decision, because he will say, well, he doesn't think it's significant enough, so I can't now say it definitely is. It's got to be a clear howler for them to get involved. Semi-automated offsides have worked well, though.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, they've been really good. So hopefully we'll see them in the Premier League sometime soon. But it answers your question about the overall quality of the tournament. I think it's been great, and I was a bit concerned by the lack of jeopardy, bearing in mind that only 8 teams go home in the group stage, and Scotland managed to fill one of those places. But I think going into the final rounds of matches, there was still all to play for, and there was still drama, and I wasn't convinced we get that. So I'm encouraged by that. Yeah,
the other thing is that there is a couple of groups where we've had shock winners. So Romania winning a group and Austria winning a group, that no one saw that coming. And I think that's good for the tournament, because what it's done is it's actually pushed some of the bigger teams all together on one side of the draw. Great for England, possibly, potentially, let's not get overexcited, but not great. If you're France, Spain, Portugal or Germany, you're going to meet a bigwig very, very quickly.
I think what you say is bang on, Sam. You know what I really like? We spoke to Ralph Rangnick before the tournament started over in our hotel across the river there, and he said, we feel good. We feel good. We fear nobody. We feel good. And he meant it. And as you mentioned there, Romania, I like it, Sam, because at this stage in the proceedings, these guys are saying to the bigger boys, the bigger nations, right, what are you made of?
Yeah.
Let's see what you're made of now. It gets to the business end of the tournament. Let's see what you can do now. Give it your best shot. Let's see what they can do.
Well, Slovakia will be thinking that going into their first game of the last 16 when they play England live on talkSPORT. So let's get stuck into that. Now, the first knockout games start this weekend, 5 o'clock on Saturday. If you're back in the UK, it will be Switzerland against Italy. England play on the Sunday. Well, England's last 16 opponents are Slovakia, ranked 48 in the world, coming into the tournament. What do we think about that?
What, the fact they're ranked 48th in the world, or the fact England have got to play them?
Well, I think we'll probably start with England have got to play them.
It's the dream draw. There's no two ways about it. Again,
is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it is. You look at those powerhouses on the other side of the draw. I mean, Gareth Southgate must be the luckiest international manager in history. 3 of his 4 tournaments, he's had a cakewalk into the
But
latter
is this
stages.
England team not built to play better opposition? That could be the argument that some are putting forward.
I'd be very worried if England were coming up against a Spain, a Portugal, a France, a Germany, or even an Austria.
And you're not very worried about them playing Slovakia?
No. England will win. It might not be pretty, but England will win.
What do you think, Jim? As an outside observer with no real interest apart from the fact that you don't actually want them to win.
I go with what Alex has just said there, to be quite honest, Sam. I mean, at one stage, what was it? If Portugal had beaten Georgia, it would have been the Netherlands, right? That might have been a different proposition. England will win. I mean, if this comes back and slaps me in the face this comment, England will win, I'm quite happy for it to do so. But you have to think, Alex is right. It's a dream draw. Anybody that said that otherwise is in cloud cuckoo land. England are fully expected to beat Slovakia and beat them comfortably. And if Slovakia were to find a way of putting England out, is it a bigger shock than when Roy Hodgson's England crashed to Iceland?
I think it is, and we were discussing this earlier. The reason I believe it would be a bigger shock if they went out to Slovakia than Iceland is because the resources that are available to Gareth Southgate now are so greater than the ones that Roy Hodgson had at the time, but also he's had 8 years of working with this group of players and working in international management to fashion his ideas and identity. So if that was to be the case, it would rank up there very much alongside Iceland as a huge, huge shock.
Yeah.
And I was playing devil's advocate. I think when you look at the way the draw has panned out, it's going to be a massive, massive mistake if England do not get at least to a semi-final, and they probably should get to the final.
I think they have to get to the final. You know, as much as we've been lauding Austria, and I think that probably will be the semi-final, it's all there for them. And if they were to lose this game, I mean, that would be an absolute disaster for Southgate to end his tenure.
What do you think of the criticism that has been doing the rounds? Because I was firmly of the belief, and anyone who's listened to this podcast will know this quite well, that they've almost talked themselves into this situation. I don't think that the press around them, especially after the first game, and even after the second game, was that bad. I actually think that most people were sort of like, it wasn't great, but they didn't lose. They hardly conceded a goal up until... Well, the only goal they've conceded is an absolute world-class strike from 25 yards. They haven't been peppered. They haven't been hanging on in games. But I felt like that from the minute the Serbia game ended, the players felt that they were getting criticised. I looked at the papers and I didn't feel that. I didn't see that. So where is that coming from? And do you think that they've almost talked themselves into it?
I was at the Denmark game. And we watched that, and I honestly thought it could go either way towards the end, Sam. Denmark could have won it. Maybe in the eyes of their own fans, they should have won it. But the Danish fans treated it like a win. And we spoke to some of the Danish fans afterwards, and they were making it clear to us, our players stayed out for half an hour on the pitch, and our fans didn't leave. And of course, they were on a high. And they said to us, what was going on at the other end? England's players went back inside, and there were hardly any fans from England at the other end of the stadium. And they were saying to us, you want to watch that? There's an obvious disconnect between the fans and what the players are trying to achieve in the pitch.
Which is not what Gareth Southgate has been about for 8 years. And his teams that he's developed have always had a firm connection there.
Yeah, and then fast forward to the other night, Alex. Slovenia, 0-0. The whole squad was on the pitch celebrating as if they'd won the entire tournament. The fans were going nuts. And England fans, they weren't...
Well, they emptied really quickly.
They emptied pretty quickly. There were a couple of plastic cups thrown
at
at
that was just one numpty, wasn't it? I mean, that wasn't the tone of the overall support, actually. The support was brilliant on the night, I thought, from the England fans.
Yeah, but again, they left, and it wasn't job done. Not in the eyes of how Gareth and the players would have wanted to get the job done. So there's a lot to do. They're in the last 16. There's a lot to do. They have to show a lot more than they've shown.
Yeah, well, tactically, what they're going to do, because the other issue that you've got is we've talked about them having muddled thinking when they've gone onto the pitch. He sort of admitted that all of his midfield options haven't worked so far. He just put Trent Alexander-Arnold in. He lasted a game and a half. After 54 minutes against Denmark, he was hooked. Then Gallagher went in. He lasted until half-time in the third game. Then Mainoo's come in. So who starts?
Well, first and foremost, that smacks of a manager who doesn't know what his best team is. And I felt sorry for Conor Gallagher, because the impression I got when we broke the news on talkSPORT that Conor was in the team was that this was his opportunity to make that spot his own. Very difficult to do that in 45 minutes. But obviously he's made that change. I'd be surprised if Conor starts this game. I think Kobbie Mainoo came on and did enough in that second half, probably to start. But I think he's got to settle on a player. He can't... So if Kobbie Mainoo comes in against Slovakia and doesn't have a great first half, does he hook him at half-time and then try Adam Wharton? You can't keep doing that. He needs to have commitment and conviction and decide who he wants to play in alongside Declan Rice. I would personally move Bellingham back there, put Foden in the number 10, and then bring on a natural left-sided player. But I said that before the tournament.
Yeah, the other thing that people were crying out for is a bit of creativity and moving the ball faster. I was sitting over having a cup of coffee with the boss earlier on today, and a guy tapped me on the shoulder. Darren Bent was there as well. A guy tapped me on the shoulder, a German guy, and he just said to me, I love the England players, but I don't understand why you play so slow.
Yeah.
Why do you play so slow?
Yeah.
You need to play faster. If you play faster, you'll be better. And I think watching the game on Monday night or Tuesday night, whenever it was, I can't remember now, all the days roll into one. But that night I was commentating on the game thinking, this needs to speed up.
Yeah.
If you speed this up, you're going to cause them problems. And the times that they did that, they did cause them a problem. In fact, they scored a goal which was narrowly offside, but that became about quick, sharp movement.
Yeah, it was a great move.
So Cole Palmer comes into the team, does well. Everyone thinks, great, we need that little bit of creativity. Gordon came on for 3 minutes. Do either of those players get a start in this game, do you think?
Does he drop Foden? Does he drop Bukayo Saka? I don't think so. He definitely doesn't drop Harry Kane, despite some clamouring for that. So I still probably only see one change, unless he gambles on Luke Shaw and he comes in at left back. But again, he's been out for so long. I'd be surprised if he did that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think the atmosphere around the team from the supporters has been really positive. I think the way that they sang all the way through that second half, when it clearly wasn't going very well, was really impressive. But I feel like that Gareth Southgate gets the lot of the criticism. He can deal with it. It's all waters off a duck's back. But do you think he deserves as much criticism as he gets? Do we have a sort of... I mean, I read an article in the paper today which suggested that we overburden this team with expectation. Do we?
Yeah, but rightly so. Rightly so. England expects. And rightly so. And if they're not seeing what they expect to see, the supporters will get on his back. And it's a price in the ticket, Sam. He knows that. That's why he has accepted the responsibility for it and try and deflect from the responsibility heading the players' way.
Yeah.
But I think it stands out a mile. If Slovakia are that beatable, start Cole Palmer. If they're that beatable, start Anthony Gordon and get in their faces and win a game. And England fans were saying to me as we were leaving the stadium in Cologne the other night, this isn't the Declan Rice we see playing for Arsenal that plays for England. This isn't the same guy. And a lot of them were saying similar things as we were leaving. Yeah. Why is it when they get under the guidance and management of Gareth, they seem to change behaviourally or tactically on the field of play?
Do you think it's the coach, or do you think it's the heaviness of the shirt and the burden of expectation that is placed upon them?
They should embrace that, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about players here who've won Premier Leagues and Champions
Leagues. Yeah, but Gareth
Leagues.
Southgate doesn't tell them to miscontrol the ball. Gareth Southgate doesn't tell them to play the ball straight out of play. In the first 15 minutes of that game against Slovenia, there was odd touches. There was a lack of surety and certainty about almost everybody.
Yeah.
It looks like they don't have confidence in themselves in an England shirt.
Who has shone for England so far? Who's shone? Who's the standout?
Only Mark Gahey, I think.
I mean, and
you're struggling to come up with a name.
And you're struggling to. I mean, he's done well. He's settled into tournament life quite well.
Yeah.
But he,
And you won your group.
He hasn't really been tested that often.
You won your group, and we're struggling to name someone.
It is the worst group in living history, though, isn't it? I mean, the fact is that there was only 6 goals scored in that entire group.
Oh, I don't know. We've gone out to worse.
It was awful. That group was. Denmark went through in second place because they got fewer yellow cards than Slovenia. That in itself should never be allowed.
Yeah.
In fact, maybe no one from Group C should go through.
Yeah.
It was that bad.
I think some England players, Sam, to finish in England, I think some England players should really take this thing on, embrace the tournament with the massive worldwide audience that it gets, and say, I'm going to make a statement in this game against Slovakia. I'm going to be man of the match. I'm going to do it. Bellingham. What have we seen from Bellingham so far?
Why has he only passed once to Harry Kane in each of the last 2 games?
Well, that's a bizarre statistic, but I mean, I thought for the first hour of the tournament he was absolutely terrific in the opening game against Serbia. But
are they occupying the same space?
Well, I think him and Foden quite often occupy the same space. Declan Rice quite often occupies the same space as the 2 central defenders, which again is a very different Declan Rice to we see for Arsenal. But yeah, the fact that Bellingham and Kane aren't working cohesively, I think is a problem that Gareth has to solve quickly. And I just wonder about the body language of these England players as well. There's been a lot of slumped shoulders. There's been a lot of bickering amongst themselves during games. There was an article in one of the newspapers this morning where a lip reader worked out that Bellingham was dropping F-bombs against his own teammates in that last game against Slovenia. So I just wonder if the camp is as united as it has been in previous tournaments.
Come on, that doesn't mean anything, does it? I mean, how many F-bombs do we drop about each other's performance on a day-to-day basis?
It's probably not a bad thing, though, that somebody like Bellingham is out there saying what he means and meaning what he says. Because that's what England need. They need somebody on the field of play to get into them more. Yeah. And if Bellingham's assuming that responsibility, good on you, Jude. Do it.
Well, they also need a bit more all-action, high press, get up the front of the pitch a little bit more, play more football in the opponent's half, which they did actually in the second half against Slovenia. Yeah. But they're going to need to do that against Slovakia. Slovakia started so brightly in their last game against Romania. They got right on the front foot. They had a shot on goal within 13 seconds. Then another 2 before the 2-minute marker was out. They really went for it in that game, even though they only needed a draw to go through.
It's the 6 o'clock kickoff as well, isn't it, on Sunday?
Yeah, 5 o'clock in the UK, 6 o'clock here.
Which could be a problem because we're sat here now, 4:20 to 5 local time, and we are We are sweating out recording this podcast. It is very hot.
It's
over
not
here
going to be as hot
in Germany.
on Sunday. I think the temperatures dip actually later in the week to sort of back to the early 20s.
Yeah.
So
Okay, well,
hopefully it'll be a little bit
That
better.
will help England, because I also think
And rain as well, I think, on Sunday.
physically, I better get a coat. But physically, they've looked undercooked. England. Kane doesn't look fit. Bellingham, I think, apart from that first hour, has looked really lethargic. Trippier doesn't look fit.
You don't. As your lip reader wasn't working at Scotland Hungry. He would have said he would have come out with a few things. I'm quite sure.
You don't look undercooked, by the way. You look absolutely roasting sitting there. But we'll concentrate on some of the other possibilities going forward now by looking at the rest of those involved in the last 16 and who could be the biggest threat to England's obvious supremacy. Well, I think in any other tournament, France against Belgium would be the standout game that everybody would be looking forward to in the last 16. But they've both been underwhelming, haven't they?
They have, Sam, and it's a great fixture. You know, when you think of it, as you rightly say, France against Belgium at any time really wets the whistle. But De Bruyne hasn't been happy with his own Belgian teammates. He showed that just the other night here. And of course, we know that the French have been misfiring to a large degree as well. We had Emmanuel Petit on our show the other day saying the French bore him. He's bored by the French. He was also saying he was bored by what he's seen from England. And if anybody can talk, it's a World Cup winner like Petit. So I think if France come alive, I think they'll cause Belgium problems. Now, I would take the French to progress.
Talking about the way he is viewed in France, Didier Deschamps gets a similar level of scrutiny and bad press as Gareth Southgate, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. And Petit made the point, Sam, that no matter what, he doesn't really change things. Deschamps sticks with what he knows and what he wants, and isn't really that open to changing things on the field of play.
And he's more irritable with the press, actually. You know,
Yeah.
there was a press conference after their last game in which he said he was talking to a foreign journalist, and he was all like laughing and joking, and then a reporter from L'Equipe asked him a question, and he said, well, you've probably heard that gossip from your butcher or your baker as usual, sort of almost like a witty put down or a sort of a pithy put down to sort of suggest that actually, you know, he doesn't really rate their level of reporting, and he actually feels a bit of their heat.
Well, I think if Mbappe comes alive, and I'm sure he will, mask or no mask, but it will be mask, I think he can do a lot of damage to the Belgians. I mean, if you two can tell me, when is Romelu Lukaku ever going to kick into gear and come off the field of play in an arena like this with a hat-trick or even two?
Well, some might say it'd be helpful if he kicked the ball.
Yeah.
Which he didn't do in the final group game when he was set up by De Bruyne.
Yeah, and he's been sort of the beacon, I think, for this Belgium underachievement, not just at this tournament, but in Qatar as well. And I'm with Jim. I think we're still to see the best of France. I think the Mbappe injury probably derailed them a little bit in terms of winning the group. They've ended up in the more difficult half of the draw. But if they play as well as they can, if Mbappe plays as well as he can, this could be a French trouncing. I don't rate this Belgium team at all. I think they're poor.
Just back to that media question just again, because you and I have had this conversation privately, but I think it's worth pointing out. I don't think that Gareth and the team actually get bad press. I don't think they do. I mean, there's a groundswell of public opinion which might surface on social media with memes and with different sort of GIFs that pop up on your WhatsApp groups, but actually the press pack that follow England are not giving them as tough a time. In fact, some of them even calling today for a refocusing of the viewpoint in which we should be taking, because they say that actually England won the group, they're through, they've got one of the best defences, don't worry about it, they'll get better. Gareth just needs a little bit more respect after what he's achieved over the last 8 years. But when you look back to times gone by and the way that England managers were treated, he is treated very differently. And I think that's because of the way he has built the team over the last 8 years and their connection.
Yeah, and because of how affable he is with the media. And you say he's opened the doors to the England dressing room, which previous managers didn't really do. I think he's been judged very generously. I mean, you can point to what he's achieved, semi-finals and finals, but
that's a massive achievement for England.
Yeah, but I'll flip that around and say they should have beaten Italy, they should have beaten Croatia.
Yeah, but that's a boring old narrative that everyone keeps going on about forever and ever and ever and ever. But ultimately, the bare statistics bear out that England never have got to a final before since 1966. That's a major achievement. You know, it doesn't matter that...
but is it possible to be an achievement and also an underachievement all at the same time?
It is, but it's about what happens now, right? So instead of keeping beating him with the same stick, as well, we didn't bring a sub on against Italy, but you got to a penalty shootout. Isn't it worth now saying, it's what you do in this tournament. You've taken this step, then you've took that step, then you've took that step. Well, what are you going to do now? I think that's the question now, rather than going over all
Did
old
you think
narratives.
they'd win the World Cup in Qatar?
No.
Did you think they'd beat Italy at Wembley in the final of the Euros?
No, on the morning, I was hopeful that it was possible.
When
yeah.
Trippier scored early on the semi-final in Russia,
Yeah.
did you think England are at 1 foot in the final and they'll win it?
No. They were a young team at the time.
So I think, Sam, there's only so
I was
long
sitting
you
behind the
could-
goal that day, by
I
the
must
way.
admit, what I would say about Gareth, and your point's a good one, Sam, and he merits a fair bit of praise, but he also merits a fair bit of criticism that comes his way as well.
But that's fine. You can do that. I think you can, there's no reason why you can't criticise him.
He's one of the few guys you could say. We producer Luke had him in our studio, and it was myself, Stuart Pearce, and Gareth, and it was live in talkSPORT. And I put it to him: unless you win this thing, unless you win this tournament, what do you want to be known as? A winner of a major tournament or a glorious failure? And I delivered it like that. Many as an individual of Gareth Stanley would get up and walk out, but he didn't. He addressed it, and he thought the point was right to be made.
And
He wants to be remembered as a winner. Of course he does. Not
Yeah,
a
of
glorious
course.
failure, but he didn't throw his toys out the pram. And that's where I commend Southgate for the dignity he displays. But Sam, he's got to win this.
Yeah, and I think now, when you look at it, it would be a terrible failure not to get to the final because of the way that the draw
Would
is.
he carry on in the job if he...
No, I don't think he'll carry on the job no matter what happens now.
No,
I think
agree.
that the level of toxicity amongst some of the fans, not necessarily that many match-going England fans that go every single away game.
Oh, I don't know. I've spoken to a few over here.
I was at the game on Monday night, right? It wasn't that bad. The reaction, the fans were brilliant. They weren't happy about it, that's right. They were all a bit sort of, it was boring, but they weren't really getting wired into him. He had a few finger points. He had someone shout in his face. The cups came in, which was just one drunken guy who did that. And I do think that there is a few supporters that are irritated with it. But the toxicity comes from the social media, people sitting at home who expect, and rightly so, by the way, they expect this team to be performing better. And I totally and utterly get that. But I do think he's got to the point now where he's even said it this week. I think I'm the problem now. And when it gets to that level, I think he'll go. He'll go at the end of the
I
tournament.
said on your show a couple of days ago, didn't I, that it just strikes me that the England fans have probably had enough of Southgate.
Yeah.
And I think Southgate's had enough of being the England manager. So I agree with you. I think win, lose, he goes at the end of this tournament.
But I just think hopefully we'll look back and think, didn't he do a good job? It wasn't perfect. There were pitfalls. Yes, it wasn't always the most swashbuckling football because he believes in pragmatism. But I do think achievement-wise, we should look back and think, well, he took us to places we hadn't been for a very, very long time.
Yeah, but
and
Sam,
remember
I think
what
if
he
you
took
look
over.
back in it with objectivity, mate, and who am I, a Scot, and our lot went out very early. If you look back at it objectively, you'll look back in it thinking, Gareth should have won something.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think I agree with that too. I agree with that
Not
too.
you got us to great positions.
Maybe.
You get into positions, you finish it.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
got to be about winning.
that's something that England have lacked, though, isn't it?
Especially if you're
Finishes.
England.
Yeah.
You guys are England.
We
This
haven't
is
got
England.
a great habit of winning things.
Yeah. We
I'll
would
be
mind
honest.
your pedigree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Right, talk about, we've mentioned Spain. You like them, 100% record. They rested 10 players in their last game.
Still
So they've
look
got Georgia in the next round. Could Georgia cause them any problems?
No, I don't think so. And actually, I think the way that Georgia play, those two wide players, the 16-year-old Yamal and Nico Williams, I think has been one of the stars so far. I think they'll have a field day.
Okay, your pick, Portugal, ended the group campaign with defeat to Georgia, though. What do you reckon about them?
I was a bit worried after that last performance, but it wasn't their first team. The issue I think you've got there is they're so desperate, and he's so desperate to get Cristiano Ronaldo on the score sheet. That's why he started against Georgia, throws his toys out the pram when he comes off. And there were a lot of people, when I put up Portugal at the start of the season, A, they pointed out that Roberto Martinez was the manager, and B, they said Ronaldo could be a problem, and I think he could be an issue, particularly on that half of the draw now.
What do you think about Ronaldo and Roberto Martinez, the way he's handled him?
It's looked a bit awkward, hasn't it? It certainly has. I agree with Alex. I think there's probably a clash of personality there. Ronaldo clearly will run the show. He'll run the Portuguese camp, in spite of what Roberto wants to do. But you cannot have a situation where a nation like Georgia, 3 million people, show up and beat Portugal with the class and quality that Portugal have got. That should never happen. I know football throws up surprises, Sam.
They had already
but
won the group, though, hadn't they? So they may
It
have
was a
just
strong
taken
team.
their-
There's some
Even
good
at
players
that,
out
though,
there.
it was
Oh,
a strong
absolutely, but they
team.
got a strong squad, so every player they bring in is strong.
Yeah, but I mean, to say it was a major surprise is putting it mildly. Yeah, I was very optimistic for Portugal, but maybe there are a couple of question marks now, Sam. But they're star-studded nonetheless.
Absolutely. France get to get going. Germany have got a tie on Saturday night. How do you think they'll come through that?
Denmark are a difficult side. They're not a great side. They're not as good a side as they were at the last Euros, but they'll try and make it difficult for Germany. They'll put men behind the ball as they did up until England scored, actually, and then they took the game to England. But on home soil, it's in Dortmund this game, isn't it? The atmosphere,
Yeah.
the atmosphere should be terrific with the German fans and the yellow wall. I'd be surprised if Germany don't win with a little bit to spare.
I'm going to Austria versus Turkey on Tuesday night in Leipzig. I'm really excited about that game, not only because Austria play a certain style of football which gets you off your seat, but Turkey are a bit chaotic and frenetic, so I imagine it's going to be quite a humdinger of a match. But the atmosphere around it's going to be superb. It's not far from Austria for them to get across the border and get involved with backing their team and Ralf Rangnick, because they're all fully paid up members, like Crook now is, of the Ralf Rangnick fan club.
Yes.
And
Major U-turn there.
So that is some U-turn, by the way. The Turkish diaspora in Germany has really embraced this team. And they're a bit brave. They're a bit, I don't know, maybe youthful.
Tactically, they're not great.
Tactically naive. But ultimately, they get your bum off your seat, don't they? They're exciting.
Great game, isn't it?
It's a great game to do. I'm looking forward to it.
And you're working on it.
Working on that. I think Austria will end up winning that
I agree.
and going through. Austria got a great chance to get to the semi-final. In fact, if you look at the odds on who is the biggest outsider to win the tournament, of those who could be real contenders, I think they're great value.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've written their name all over this tournament, to be quite honest, Sam. And I don't think they'll exit at this stage. I mean, they're players now that we're familiar with, and we can reel off quite a number of names in the Austrian lineup. Whereas before anybody ever mentions Austria to me, I used to think Hans Krankel, and that was it.
Yeah.
Forget it after that. So yeah, these guys can play, and they're in the mood. They've got the bit between their teeth. And Rangnick told us early on, watch us, we'll surprise a few. Well, he was right.
Yeah, well, he certainly surprised France and the Netherlands. They won that group. Outstanding.
Yeah.
Any other outside bits that you want to bring into the last few minutes?
Yeah, I think if we're looking for an upset in the round of 16, Switzerland against Italy, I was really unimpressed with Italy
Is that an
against
upset?
Spain. I think it would be in terms of major tournament pedigree. They're the holders. We forget that, Italy. How can we forget that? But yeah, I think Switzerland might put them out, and it could well be England-Switzerland in the quarter-final, which again, difficult type of opponent for Gareth Southgate.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Well, good luck to England, even if it hasn't been good so far. It may well get better as we go on. All the games that continue over the weekend, the last 16 starts on Saturday, are live on talkSPORT and talkSPORT 2. In fact, every game of the Euros is on talkSPORT and talkSPORT 2. And of course, Jim and Simon and Crook will be bringing your show from all different destinations around the country.
Lord Jordan has flown back by private jet. He will continue covering the tournament, but back in London. Myself, producer Luke, and assistant producer Joe will carry on, of course, bravely here in this beautiful country of Germany. Come on, Scotland.
You keep doing that. Crook will pop up on every single show, and we'll be doing the Euros All Access podcast every day when you wake up throughout the course of the tournament.